Okay.
There we go. Quality looks worse when we're on record, but anyhow, Stephen Follett here with Thunderbird Long Range and Randy Galvan of Long or LRS Precision, and we're on the Long Range Studies podcast page. Today we got a topic from Randy because of that little gun that's right behind him. I can see the scope and the barrel poking out.
Yeah,
And
so
yep. So explain what that is and why we're talking about what we're talking about.
that's a Voodoo V22 that I've got set up right now for ELR 22 shooting. It's got 90 MOA of base and rail on it right now. I had posted a picture on a couple Facebook groups, just joking that the scope looks like it's pointed down, and I got a lot of comments from people saying that the scope is mounted too high. And that really seems to be a big misconception for people on the internet, that they need their scope to be mounted as low as possible to the barrel of their rifle.
Yeah,
Not,
I mean, we've kind of gone round and round on occasion uh, when people say, "Oh, we got to mount it low," and as long as you can slide a dollar bill between it, and we've had the conversation a lot, and it keeps coming up again and again. But lots of reasons why people think that they need it, and there's actually more reasons why they really shouldn't do it.
yeah.
I even remember Mark from Accurate Ordnance posting pictures of a rifle that had marks where the scope had hit the rifle
Right, because
barrel.
you've got flex in the barrel when you fire it and having your scope too close. I've seen pictures of scopes that have actually been damaged to the point where they needed to be either sent in or just thrown away because of that. The person mounted it on a big Magnum, probably, I don't remember exactly what it was, probably a 300 Win Mag or a 7 Mag or some kind of rum or something, and it was mounted so low that you could barely get a dollar bill under it. You fire it, you get all that flex from the barrel, and it ends up bending the bell on the scope.
Yeah, I saw a picture. This is the on the extreme, but somebody had put a bell or had a uh, the shade scope shade tube screwed in. It was on a Night Force, I think, and they shot it on a 50 cal, which is on the extreme. But the scope shade had come apart in the threads, and so it was pointing up because the recoil, it hit and it jammed the threads, and so it pulled the threads out of the bottom of the scope shade.
Yeah,
So that's the number one reason why you don't want to do it, because it's not because you could damage your the finish on your barrel, but you could really mess up your scope.
yeah,
And
and
no reason to do that. It can also affect repeatability, because if you keep hitting your scope, your zero is not going to stay the same.
right. And the other thing that I've found too is if a scope's mounted too low on a rifle, it's just not comfortable to get behind. It's not a natural point to put your cheek on the stock to get behind the scope every time. So you're kind of having to get down and then adjust your head.
Yeah, yeah. What I've found is, if you're old school hunting, and this is where it came from, and the stock and the comb drops like this, that was because you needed your cheek right here to look right over the barrel, because you had the sights, the front sight and the rear sight, and you needed to look right over the top of the barrel, and so the comb drops way down like this, and that's why. But with our modern rifles, we've got chassis and everything gets pushed up. So as soon as you try to mount your scope lower, you don't have any room to get your cheek lower, because usually the comb drop down. And that's why people, when they first started mounting scopes, was get it as close to the bore as possible. That's one of the reasons, coming from those hunting rifles and those guys with the nice Monte Carlo stocks and everything. It was to get the cheek weld, but stay right over the top of the bore of the rifle. And the scopes didn't have as big of objectives back then. They were long, narrow tubes, right? And so that's the origin when it came from a hunting rifle with iron sights to entering the optics. And so that was what it was. And we look and we see that the stock still has maintained its traditional shape, right? You buy a hunting rifle with a plastic stock generally, and it's going to have that dropped comb, and you're going to need to build it up 2 or 3 inches to get it into a situation where you can get that cheek weld. But a chassis, it comes straight across the back.
Right. Or you can, and pretty much every higher end stock or chassis has an adjustable comb anyway, so you can still get up higher that way as well.
Yeah. But when shooting that rifle, and you were talking about the comfort, when it had the dropped comb, you were able to keep, in reference to your shoulder and your head, it was down low, but when we're shooting precision rifles in the positions that we shoot, it's you want to have the stock higher in the angle, because a lot of those rifles, the hunting rifles and battle, old military battle rifles, let's face it, they weren't set up to be shooting off of bipods.
No.
So when you're saying it's not comfortable, it's literally not comfortable to engage in the positions like we have now. The other thing is, it's really been a big thing lately as far as positional. I know Phil Vallejo has talked about it, but I've started recently is putting the buttstock of the rifle actually right below next to my neck on my collarbone, so that I just have to bring my head down just like this. But if it's really low, then I have to crane my neck forward. Whereas if I do it like this, then I can just rest it forward. But when it's really low, then I have to crane my neck forward. So you are talking comfort. You don't need it.
Yeah,
you don't need it right next to the bore.
Right, and I've seen the same thing. Like, I've shot other people's rifles where they've got almost no clearance whatsoever, and just shooting prone, I'm having to angle my head so much to get to where I can actually use the scope and not have half of it either blacked out or not even be able to see it, that it gets...
Yeah, so you've got to move it further out, and
to
get the angle, and so when you're doing the precision rifles, a little bit extra height doesn't even hurt. It can be helpful, especially with the movable cheek piece.
Yeah.
The comb. So when it comes to those things, positional, it's beneficial to have an adjustable comb, and you don't need to worry about the sight height over the bore. It can be, a half an inch, no problem. Mine are about a quarter of an inch. I don't really try to get them close, but I just try to bring it down. I don't want it extra high.
Right.
But I don't try to get it close. I just want it.
Yeah, and then you run into the same problem with too high. Then if you don't have enough adjustment in your comb, or you don't have a comb that's adjustable, you're kind of having to crane your head up to be able to get behind the scope. But when it comes to actually shooting the rifle, there's really no disadvantage to having it up. You'll hear people saying, well, if the scope's up too high, the cant of the rifle, left or right, is going to be affected more. Which, yes, to an extent it is, but you should, especially for long range stuff, one, you should always have a level and be trying to make sure your gun's level no matter how high your scope is, because one scope being a half inch higher than another one is not going to make that much difference, because it's already higher than the bore no matter where you're at on it. So that's why cant is still going to affect your rifle, really, how high it is.
And so that's kind of the second point. The first point of why and where to mount your scope is comfort and usability. So that's one thing. But the second one is how it affects the trajectory of the bullet, right? And that's what you're saying is, people say that if the bore is way down here, right, and it's up here, and if you cant the rifle, then it's going to throw the windage off. So if you cant it to the right, your bullet's going to miss to the left. If you cant it to the left, your bullet's going to miss to the right, right? That's what you're saying. People say you need to be right there so that the cant error is minimized.
Right, and people think that, but unless you find some crazy scope mount that's like a 12 inch above the bore, you're not going to see a difference between ultra low rings and extra high rings, for example.
Yeah. So, and to put it in proportion here, we're talking about the difference in cant. Now, if you have it, and it's proportional, right? If it's 2 inches above the bore, or an inch and a half, whatever, let's just say 2 inches above the bore, which isn't too unreasonable, and you cant it, right? The bullet is traveling, right, thousands of yards. So in relation to 2 inches to 3 inches, which is or an inch and a half to 3 inches is going to be the extreme. In relation to the thousands of yards, mathematically, it's not going to increase it a significant amount.
No. And you do, and no matter what it is, you still want to be checking for cant anyway.
Yeah.
It really doesn't matter.
Yeah, I'll put it like this, at 1,000 yards, if you're trying to hit an MOA target and you have enough cant induced, right, to make a miss, if you have an inch and a half or 2 inches, right, it's still going to miss on the other side, but the amount of the air you have to have is going to be much, much greater to do that. And so that's the thing, is if your air is so great that you're going to miss with a 5-inch bore over height, your level is really out of whack.
Yeah, and realistically, you would still miss with a 1.5 inch height over bore.
That's what I probably should have said.
Yeah.
Put it better. Yeah, you're so far out that you should almost be able to tell.
Oh yeah, you should definitely be able to tell the gun's canted even without a level at that point.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is if your scope is that far above your rifle, if you look through your scope and then look down at your rifle, you'll be able to see that it's off. Like if it's right here and it's tilted a little bit, you can't see it as much. But if the higher it is, if you look and follow your reticle down, and that's a trick. If you get behind your scope and you're square and behind it, if you look down, you can kind of follow your reticle.
Yeah,
you can see.
And the human brain actually has a built-in level in it. It doesn't have to be off much for you to just be able to look and be like, that's not level, if you're paying attention to it.
In most situations, I agree. I haven't been able to really dial that in yet. So I still use a level. I'm getting better at it.
Oh yeah, no, you should definitely use a level.
Yeah.
That's another thing. A lot of people were saying that there was no level on the 22 that's behind me that I'm going to be using on Saturday. And there's actually one built into the stock. So.
Oh, in your stock, yeah.
Yeah.
So, but that is the thing, is the mathematical error for the bore over height isn't going to make a difference within any reasonable scope height. Like how high is that 22 behind you?
Center line of the bore to center line of the scopes, about 2.5, 2 3/4 inches.
Yeah.
Which is considerably higher than most people run their scopes. But if you look at pretty much every ELR gun, they're all like that. And then you've got the more extreme ones where they've got so much cant in their base, the base is 6 inches above the gun.
Yeah, they've gotten away from that with the Charlie Tarak, the taco unit, though. Fortunately, with the prism.
Yeah.
And the side prism, so they don't have to get that, because
it looks
the
silly.
First few ELR, they'd have that machine base that itself was like 6 inches tall and canted like that.
Oh, they still have them out there.
Yeah.
But really, what it comes down to with the height over bore on your scope, the most important thing with how high you mount your scope is what is comfortable for you to just be able to get down behind the rifle and have your eye naturally stop where everything is in focus and you can just see your crosshairs, where you're not having to get down and then kind of adjust your head all around. Because I mean, I've been on guns when I've borrowed guns and used them, and I've had to get down, and it takes me forever just to get my head lined up to where my eye and the scope are aligned to be able to even see through it to start finding my target. And then a lot less.
You really got to scrunch your head down.
Yeah, and then a lot less, or the opposite if it's too high. You'll run into the same problem, and that also makes it to where it's even less forgiving. So you're up like this, you're trying to get into it, you finally get into it, you're looking for the target, your head moves a little bit, and now you just lost it, and you have to find the whole thing again.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right, and you're talking about, comfort and vision as it relates to being able to see the target, to acquire a sight picture and maintain a sight picture.
Yeah.
I can tell you that I am going to tear down my rifle completely, my scope and my scope off. I'm going to tear it apart. I'm going to readjust everything from the butt to the scope mount, because I have seen that the amount of trembling in my reticle that's coming from just an awkward, squished up position.
Yeah.
As I started following and getting more comfortable, to where I'm just comfortable, to where it just naturally falls there.
And
it's improved.
that's a huge thing when it comes to shooting, especially long distance, is getting comfortable behind the gun, getting the gun set up for you. Yeah. And we can probably do an hour-long video on how to set a rifle.
Yeah, no, there have been a lot of them, and it might be helpful for us to kind of summarize that.
Yeah. Because there's so much stuff you need to adjust. You need to adjust where your scope is, what your comb's adjusted to, the length of pull, all kinds of stuff.
We don't want to get too far off into the weeds, but
that'll be a separate video we'll work on here shortly, probably.
Yeah, we'll cover that one. Maybe if we've got some time, we can do that one right now, but just do it as a separate one.
Yeah.
But scope over bore height. Don't worry about it. Don't get it too close and don't get it too high. But any reasonable scope height that is comfortable for you to shoot in is going to be the best.
Yep.
And especially for older shooters or somebody that has neck problems or back problems, when you can sit up without craning your head forward, you're going to be more comfortable and you'll be able to shoot longer.
Yep.
And so for you, or if you have a longer neck, right? Some guys just have a longer neck. It needs to be up higher so that you can be comfortable. That's the number one thing, comfort, because the trajectory is largely irrelevant, because you just need to get a bubble level regardless, at least to train yourself and to double check yourself. So that's where it's at. All right. Any last comments on that one?
No, that's pretty much it. Just get your gun and scope height to where it's comfortable for you. That's really the most important thing. And I think second might be, you could say cosmetically, it looks better with the scope not having a 2-inch gap, but it doesn't matter. And I would take something not looking as good and being comfortable versus, hey, that looks cool, but it's pain to shoot.
Yeah. You know what I can foresee is, once these guns get out there and people get them set up the way that is comfortable to them, then we're going to see that become the new norm. Yep. And then all of the pictures and clip art that have the scope really low to the rifle, you're going to see that rifle move up. You're going to see the changes. When chassis first came out, people thought, oh man, those look ridiculous. But now it's kind of the standard. And if you see a rifle without a chassis, a precision rifle, you kind of think, is that a precision rifle? I mean, that's,
you say that and we all shoot with stocks, but
we shoot, but I mean, that's the perception. You go around and you ask.
Well, I say that I shoot with stocks, but there is also a chassis leaning up against the dresser right there next to that rifle.
So I'm much more of a stock guy, but we're going on and on. But somebody could have ended the video and clicked stop view, but we'll go ahead and kill it right now before it gets any longer.
All right.
All right. We'll talk.
Have a good night. So, see you guys later.